Of course, I am in the 80s. I have my own career. Yeah, so it was very hard to work with the wedges and stuff, but we know.
I'd like to introduce some friends of mine to you. Would you welcome Mr. Robert Plant, Mr. Jimmy Page, Mr. John Paul
This is Robert Townsend on Backstage, and like I said, we're going to talk to Robert Plant in a minute, but everybody's here. Bob Geldof is standing right here. How are you, sir?
This gig seemed to prove to me that I've got some pretty powerful friends.
Ronnie Lane was a bass player, songwriter, and producer, best known for his work with Small Faces. Roy Harper celebrated his latest record release, Valentine. Jimmy Page played on one track, and the album back cover included a quote dedicated to Bonzo, Jimmy, John Paul, and Robert. Included in attendance for the evening was Ronnie Lane on bass, plus Jimmy Page, John Bonham, and Robert Plant on stage, celebrating Harper's music and rock and roll friendship. Ronnie Lane was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1977. His girlfriend had the idea of a benefit show. The show was organized by Lane himself and Glyn Johns. The artist lineup was based around the holy trinity of British guitar players, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and Jeff Beck, along a rock royalty supporting cast featuring Bill Wyman, Charlie Watts, Ronnie Wood, Kenny Jones, Steve Winwood, Tony Hymas, Simon Phillips, and others. Singers Joe Cocker and Paul Rodgers joined the subsequent 9-date US tour. Out of the three guitar legends, Jimmy Page got the longest and loudest applause. After being away from the stage since July 1980, the audience was thrilled to see the master himself back in action. His opening song, Prelude from his Death Wish 2 soundtrack, summed up the events of recent years. A fragile-looking Jimmy was back to the place where all his problems and personal tribulations on borrowed time went away, lights on and rock and roll. His instrumental take on Stairway to Heaven was a personal catharsis, hitting the F5 button for a refresh page. Feature dates feature Beck and Clapton taking turns on lead guitar, making this a unique version of Stairway, never to be repeated. Wildlife's debut album was released. Drummer Simon Kirke had a contractual obligation to Swan Song, which prevented him from going to any other label. In a similar way to Coda, Wildlife served the purpose of honoring a previous agreement. The album was recorded at Jimmy Page's Soul Studios, and the record was produced by Bad Company's Mick Ralphs. Wildlife was the last album to be published by Swan Song. The label ceased operations in October 1983. When the offices were cleared out, early demos from Iron Maiden and Heart were found, unplayed, and stored. Fun fact, among artists who were signed to Swan Song but did not release material was band Message, featuring Richie Sambora. December 1st, 1983. My parents meet for the first time at a party. They arrived separately, invited by their respective friends. They were not planning on talking to each other. My dad saw her and walked over to her table and introduced himself. My mom would say years later that he was incredibly charming and confident. My dad was into classical, tango, all-time Spanish music, and instrumental synthesizer works like Jean-Michel Jarre and Tangerine Dream. My mom liked disco, pop, classical, folk, classic rock, and of course, Led Zeppelin. Despite being born in the 40s, my dad didn't know Zeppelin nor the rock movement. He was an old soul, and my mom was rock and roll.
I enjoyed that one. I managed to get together. Hope you like it.
Jimmy Page.
Well, believe it or not, that was a piece by Chopin. Don't feel that innocent, you know that never felt that way.
once again. I'm cutting close through with the two-step on where the rhythm is lost. Through with the two-step. I've got an old friend here who's I'm used as he is to public speaking. Jimmy Page. Gotta make it feel good. Tell her that you Thank you very much from all of us.